how should I say that? Should I say, I usually say welcome to the Tabernacle of Truth, but it's not called that anymore. So I'm going to say, we're unlocking the truth about angels. I'm on with Robert and Jan. Hopefully David will be on soon. We may also hear from Earl tonight. In the background behind me, you can see a mural. This is from Joplin, Missouri. You guys might remember, what year was it whenever the big F5 hit Joplin? Was that 2016?
No.
2011 or so.
Yeah.
That far back?
Yeah.
Let's see when that F5 hit Joplin. 2011. Yeah, you're right. That was even further back than I thought.
Well, I don't
Anyway.
know about the butterfly effect you were talking about.
Well, I've got a place in my notes here. If you go into angels and you go to guardian angels, I've got some here's an article about it. Here's a big picture of the mural, and here's another mural. There's actually several murals in Joplin that involve butterflies. This one's pretty nice. Basically there was a lot of different kids in that tornado that claimed independently of each other. They didn't share stories. There were different locations around the city, kids that didn't know each other, and they independently interviewed the kids afterwards. A psychologist did, and all the kids basically had the same story. And basically they said these kids were too young to have been indoctrinated in a church or anything like that. They didn't even know what angels were. And the interviewer was a skeptic, didn't believe in angels. And the kids didn't even call them angels. They called them butterfly people. Here's several clips from some articles. I'll just read them out loud to you. About 1/2 of the children were counseled at Joplin Child Trauma Treatment Centers set up in the schools afterwards. The clinical director, Danielle Robinson, heard these stories firsthand from many different children. Many of these children stated that they somehow knew these butterfly people were there to calm them and help keep them safe. Todd C. Frankel of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch wrote an article about these apparitions entitled "The Butterfly People of Joplin." He describes former newspaper reporter Marta Churchwell's investigation and interviews with people. Marta is a natural skeptic and did not believe in angels. After numerous interviews, she cannot discount the possibility because so many children who didn't know each other told similar stories. And then down here, I've got another little snippet from a blog that a guy was writing about. He said it was a travesty that the media didn't talk more about this because it didn't, fit their narrative or whatever. But after the tornado, many local children reported seeing and being protected by butterflies or butterfly people. When the tornado hit, some believed they were angels. Others felt them to be more indescribable presence. But the butterfly story spread quickly and became a powerful image for the community as they came together to recover from the storm. From painted murals to public sculptures to community children's art projects, the butterfly theme was present everywhere. So in the story, the actual description that the people gave, most of it involved cars flying through the air and them seeing a car coming at them and their kids, and they're covered, and they're just in an empty field covering their kids up, and a car is flying at them, and right before they should die, they close their eyes, and then the tornado is going away, and the little kids say to them, "Did you see the butterfly people? They saved us." And apparently there was a lot of people that were being taken up into heaven by butterfly people. Much like the dream of Jacob's ladder, they saw people being taken up into heaven, and they assumed it was their souls being taken up into heaven, up into the tornado. But then there was also people who were protected.
Huh.
There's many stories like this. I also remember seeing on the news not too long ago, this was just in December, last December, Kentucky, you might remember there was a big giant F tornado that went through Tennessee. It destroyed the Kentucky candle factory, and the survivor who lost boyfriend in tornado says unidentified Superman saved her life. And this is one I mentioned last week. I found the article. If you click this, it'll actually take you to it. But in a nutshell, she basically says a giant wall fell on her and her coworkers, and a mysterious stranger just showed up, saved them, and no one fits that description. No one that worked at that factory fit that description. No one who knows who the guy was.
Huh.
And there's story after story you can find online of stories like this. There's another one here. I don't know if you can hear this or not.
We begin with a real-life version of the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
where a
About 7
young
minutes.
girl meets a deadly tornado with some very unexpected results. Basically exploded. Young Allison's room was fit to harvest.
I rolled off my covers and I took off running, not even thinking about what I was standing on, and just ran down the hallway, yelling for my parents.
Stop! The way's right there. There was glass on the floor, and he picked her up and brought her into our family room as I came flying in.
Miraculously, she hadn't been injured. Nothing happened. Anyone?
Oh, look here. I looked at the doctor and my cousin were okay. It's such a wonderful feeling to know everybody's all right.
We were just totally thankful. We were in one piece, alive. Nobody was hurt. Nobody killed. We're all here. And that was great.
But even more wonderful and amazing is the tale that Allison was about to tell.
There's an angel. I swear, he was protecting me. That's why I'm not hurt. The moment I woke up, I felt warmth as the essence of something being there. And I had somehow got flipped around in my bed. I believe it was an angel.
I asked her what the angel looked like then. All she could remember was she thought she was in her 20s. She was very white and glowy, and that's all she could remember about her.
What? Because she's little. I just like this now. You know, it's just, she was young. I thought she was just making something up.
But if there was any doubt to the truth of her story, it was erased when her family entered her room.
We did go back to the bedroom to see what she had gone through. With the glass all over the room, it was on top of the bed covers where she had been laying. It was a chunk, probably about 3.5 to 6 inches on her pillow where her head was. There was glass shot across the room where if you got down at the level of the bed and looked where her body was, it went straight across her and shot into the wall like knife blades.
It was just amazing. Amazing. The room was just total shambles. Glass was everywhere, stuck in every position possible except where she was laying.
And I looked at her and I looked at the floor. She ran on barefooted. I checked her body again. There was not a scratch on this child's body.
Allison's miraculous escape from injury is even more remarkable when you look at Bob Higgs' video record of the extensive damage the tornado wreaked on his neighborhood.
Anyway, so you hear stories about that type of thing a lot, but it seems like it's only little kids who see the angels. It's kind of like that with ghosts as well. It seems like it's always little kids that see ghosts, but the parents don't. I myself had a ghostly an apparition in my house at one time, and I never saw it or anything like that. But my daughter, she was an infant, and we were speaking in code, so she couldn't understand what we were saying. And she came up to me and said, "Are you talking about the ghost?" And we looked at each other in disbelief. Like, she can't spell, because I was spelling it Ghost, and she knew right away what we were talking about. Yeah, have you guys ever heard of any experiences where a kid saw something but the adults couldn't?
I personally haven't.
Yeah,
I've heard a story, but I mean, it's just kind of hearsay.
Here.
This is David, by the way. I just logged in. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
We can hear you.
Okay.
So what'd you
So,
hear?
Well, it's just it was a family member. I mean, I don't want to really talk about it too much because, like I said, it was kind of hearsay, but I have heard a story before.
Okay, so does anybody know of any guardian angel stories? Have you ever felt like you were saved miraculously and that you should have probably took the bullet that day? I myself have had a couple of experiences driving where there's like a 99% chance you're not getting out of this one, and all of a sudden, some miraculous maneuver I do, but I didn't feel like another presence took the wheel, but I definitely did something. If it was instinct, it was a miraculous instinct.
Well, I do have personal experience with that, and I asked Jesus to take the wheel, and said that, and that was the night or the day that I took Leo to Tahlequah, straight from the J Clinic to Tahlequah, and the doctor said, check into the ER. I'm already sending that doctor, Kirk, a narrative about your husband and all the numbers, on his liver and all that stuff. And so when I got down there, there was different stuff going on. And when they let us go, it was after midnight, and it was raining and sleeting. And I had, they brought him into the car in a wheelchair, but got him in the passenger seat in the front. And so we took off, and it was actually May 4th by then. It was early morning, May 4th, and 2013. We were going home on Highway 59, and we were close to the Concord turnoff, and I hit black ice, and our car just started spinning around. And I said, "Oh, Curtis," I said, "hold on, because I have no control over the car." I said, "Lord, please don't let me just have him in the hospital getting checked out and killing in a wreck. Please take the wheel." So we landed in a ditch facing the opposite way of traffic. And who had come along was Brent Maples. And he stopped, and he had worked at the casino in security, and he worked at the Siloam Springs Casino. And he said, "Are you people all right?" And so I yelled at him, and he said, "Can I get you out?" And I said, "Well, I'll need help with Leo." And he said, "Well, Leo Coffrin?" And I said, "Yeah." And I said, "Is that you, Brent?" And he said, "Yes." And he got us both out of the car and got in his truck, and he took us home. And Kit, I don't know if you went with the driver to go get the car, but people said to me later on that saw the car in the ditch, and they said, how in the world did you get that car on the opposite side of the street facing the opposite traffic, and you were probably a foot away from a culvert, which means cement? My car got pulled out by a road wrecker guy, not harmed, not bashed up or anything, not a mark on it, just a bunch of mud the next day. And of course, we lost Leo. That was on a Saturday. That was on a Friday night, I guess. And then he passed away on Saturday after he saw images and people that he talked to that day. But yeah, I asked for Jesus to take the wheel, and he did, and he planted us there and took care of us. I didn't see anybody, didn't see anything. It was just a call for help straight to God.
Yeah, and I've had a lot of instances, I guess, when kind of people just appear out of the blue or whatever, for some common purpose, or it's a coincidence or whatever, and it just seems like kind of a miracle that you're bumping into somebody at the right time.
Yeah.
That probably happens to me a lot. Maybe not the angel thing, but I guess it's related.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was the scripture that you read to me the other day, David, about, it was something that was related to, be careful who you entertain. They might be angels.
Oh yeah, it was something about strangers. I'm driving right now, so I'll be home in just like 2 minutes, and I'll try to find
I've
it.
got all the scriptures with angels in it here. I'm going to go through and just read a few of them, and then I want to talk about one in particular. All right, so Psalms 91. For he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. Hebrews 13. Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares.
There you go. That was it.
Yep. Yeah.
So strangers just showing up and showing hospitality out of nowhere.
Yeah.
They can be considered angels, possibly.
And that's what it says. Yeah. I mean,
and there's lots of instances
potential
of
there.
people that have said they were sent by God. I was reading an article. There was a lady that was having a heart attack in Texas, and a guy just showed up out of nowhere and said, God sent me here. And he just basically talked to her until she calmed down, and then took off. She's been posting pictures all over town trying to figure out who the guy was.
That's pretty awesome.
You guys ever seen Highway to Heaven?
What is it?
Highway to Heaven with Michael Landon?
I don't think I've ever seen it.
You guys have
Been a
never
long
watched
time.
that back in the 80s?
I probably did, but I don't remember.
The guy from
I need to ask I need to ask my sister if she's ever seen it. Because she always loved
you had to have seen
Michael
my
Landon.
brother.
That's why she named her son Landon Michael.
Well, you've seen Little House on the Prairie, right?
Yeah, I used to watch that.
Same actors.
Okay.
Yeah, you had to have seen that. There's no way you haven't seen that.
Yeah, I probably have.
Anyway, so Michael Landon's he's an angel in Highway to Heaven, I believe, or something like that. Him and both the other guy, they're angels, but they're in the form of humans, and they go around helping people. I think I need to review that show and watch it again. Cody, it's one of Cody's favorite shows. Okay, so Hebrews 1:14. Are they not all ministering spirits sent out to serve for the sake of those who are to inherit salvation? Psalms 34. The angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear him and delivers them. Psalm 103. Bless the Lord, O you his angels, you mighty ones who do his word, obeying the voices of his word. Jude 1:6. And the angels who did not stay within their own position of authority, but that left their proper dwelling, he has kept in eternal chains under gloomy darkness until the judgment of the great day. Isaiah 6. Above him stood the seraphim. Each had 6 wings. With 2 he covered his face. With 2 he covered his feet. With 2 he flew. Revelations 19. Then I fell down at his feet to worship him. But he said to me, you must not do that. I am a fellow servant with you and your brothers who hold to the testimony of Jesus. Worship God, for the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. So that is that an angel saying, don't worship me?
Read it again.
Revelations 19:10. Then I fell down at his feet to worship him, but he said to me, you must not do that. I am a fellow servant with you and your brothers who hold to the testimony of Jesus. Worship God, for the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy.
That's what it sounds like, is an angel telling a guy don't bow down to him.
What was the verse again?
Revelations 19:10.
So it's
We can come back to that one. David, if you want to look that up for us. Are you at home yet?
yeah. Yep.
Okay, so we'll come back to that one. I wanted to talk a little bit about Luke 15:10. There's 3 stories that go along with Luke 15:10. It says, just so I tell you, there is joy before the angels of God over one sinner who repents. So I've got a couple of commentary, some clips of commentary about Luke 15:10 that I wanted to read. So there's 3 stories here that he's telling.
Are you still on the same topic, or are you transitioning right now?
We're talking about Luke 15:10.
Okay, so back to Revelation real quick before we go to that. So it was like a great multitude in heaven, like the waters. It said, and I heard as it were the voice of a great multitude, and as the voice of many waters, and the voice of mighty thunderings. They were all singing and praising. It was everyone in heaven.
So who is his feet?
Oh, the guy that was speaking from the throne.
There was someone on the throne speaking, and it wasn't God.
It was a voice coming from the throne. Because it says, after these, I heard a great voice of much people in heaven saying, Hallelujah, salvation and glory and honor and power unto the Lord our God. So, yeah. And the voice came out of the throne saying, praise our God. Yeah. And then I fell at his feet.
So it is an angel. It says the angel did not accept John's homage and worship because only God is worthy of worship. So he's telling him, don't worship me. So like Robert said, it's the angel saying that. Because you got to be careful who you're worshiping, and they don't want you to worship anybody but Jesus, God.
He wasn't the one in the throne, though, because it says they were all worshiping the one in the throne.
I'm just reading the commentary in my book.
Yeah, because it's not in red letters either.
No, it's not. But the
Well,
whole,
in verse 4, it says, and the 24 elders and the 4 living creatures fell down and worshiped God who is seated on the throne, saying, Amen, hallelujah. And then in 10,
Recording in progress.
9, it says, the angel said to me, write this, blessed are those who are invited to the marriage supper of the Lamb. And he said to me, these are the true words of God. Then I fell at his feet and worshiped him. But he said to me, let's not do that. Yeah, so it is an angel.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, because in my version it says, I'm a fellow slave with you and your brothers.
Yeah, the one I read said servant.
And he added, these are the true words of God. Blessed are those who are invited to the wedding supper of the Lamb. These are the true words of God. At this, I fell at his feet to worship him. But he said to me, do not do it. I am a fellow servant with you and with your brothers who hold to the testimony of Jesus. Worship God, for the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. You know, I don't know how many sermons or preachings I have heard or studies on Revelation, and I think I learn something new every time I hear it. You know what I mean? Because there's just so much to take in.
Oh, yeah, let me just read this prayer that they sang in heaven. Hallelujah. For the Lord our God, the Almighty reigns. Let us rejoice and exult and give him the glory. For the marriage of the Lamb has come, and his bride has made herself ready. It was granted her to clothe herself with fine linen, bright and pure. For the fine linen is the righteous deeds of the saints.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a bunch of notes here on Revelation for angels. We're gonna go down through them. Let's see, I've got 1, 2.
I got some notes here for him, so maybe I've got some of the same ones.
I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 verses. Then I've actually got 2 from Genesis. 3 from Genesis. My first one that I've got here is Revelation 7:1. You got that one, or did you already read it?
Revelation 7:1.
Yep.
No, I don't think he's read that.
So it says, and after these things, I saw 4 angels standing on the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth or on the sea, nor on any tree. So they were stopping the wind. And then chapter 8, verse 2. And I saw the 7 angels. See, they were all like different little teams or whatever. And I saw the 7 angels which stood before God, and to them were given 7 trumpets. And then chapter 9, verse 11. And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon. We've come across that one before, I'm pretty sure. Chapter 10, verse 7. But in the days of the voice of the 7th angel, when he shall begin to sound, the mystery of God should be finished, as he hath declared to his servants the prophets. We were just reading in Jeremiah where God was telling him, this is what you need to go tell these people. God was saying, I've sent all my servants to you. You haven't listened to any of them. If you take it as literal, he said, I've sent every one of them. So anyways, Revelation 12:7 says, and there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels. Chapter 22, verse 16 says, and this is right at the end of this, is there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like 4 or 5 more verses. So verse 16, chapter 22, this is Jesus speaking. This is the interpretation I have here with red lettering. It says, I, Jesus, have sent mine angel to testify unto you these things in the churches. I am the root and the offspring of David and the bright and morning star. So Jesus sent his angels for testimony in the churches. And it just said, what did it just say on that last one? Something about something about testifying. Didn't we come across that just now? One of those previous verses. Anyways, I want to look at these 3. I just want to say them real quick, these Genesis verses, chapter 19 and verse 1. We've got, and there came 2 angels to Sodom at even, and Lot sat in the gate of Sodom, and Lot, seeing them, rose up to meet them, and he bowed himself with his face toward the ground. That was when Lot was instructed to flee Sodom. And then, oh, wait, I want to keep going here because I've got a little note here. My note says 8 washed feet called men. So let's see what I meant by that. And he said, behold now, my lords, turn in, I pray you, into your servant's house. He's talking to these angels, and tarry all night, and wash your feet, and ye shall rise up early and go on your ways. And they said, nay, but we will abide in the street all night. Anyway, and then the people came and said, they said to Lot, they said, where are the men which came into thee this night? That's when they came looking for these 2 angels. They're like, where are they? And then he offers up his daughters, doesn't he? But now, yeah, he says, verse 8, so they came banging at the door, right? They're like, get them out here, send them out here, right? And it's his job, he thinks, to protect them, even to this degree. In verse 8, he says, behold now, I have 2 daughters which have not known man. Let me, I pray you, bring them out unto you, and do ye to them as is good in your eyes. Only unto these men do nothing, for therefore came they under the shadow of my root. So that's an interesting interaction with 2 angels. Genesis 32:1. And Jacob went out on his way, and the angels of God met him. That's when he's running from Esau. And then the last one I have here is Genesis 32:24. It says, and Jacob was left alone, and there wrestled a man with him until the break of the day. Anyways, those were just a couple references from the Old Testament, and then also, we covered the New Testament ones in Revelation there, which had some interesting details to characterize the angels in each instance.
Last week we talked about a place in Daniel where it talked about the chief prince Other places, like in Jude 9, the same entity, Michael, is referred to as an archangel. And Jude 9 says, but when the archangel Michael, contending with the devil, was disputed about the body of Moses, he did not presume to pronounce a blasphemous judgment, but said, the Lord rebuke you. Is that similar to GD?
Similar to what?
You know, the insult GD, Lord rebuke you.
No, he's just saying, I'm not accusing you, God is.
But isn't that kind of, when people say GD, that's a curse, but isn't that pretty much the same thing as saying God rebuke you?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, yeah.
What does archangel mean?
Okay, so the term archangel itself is not found in the Hebrew Bible or the Christian Old Testament, and in the Greek New Testament, the term archangel only occurs once, Thessalonians 4:16 and the Epistle Jude 1:9, where it is used of Michael, who in Daniel 10:12 is called one of the chief princes and the great prince. In the Septuagint, this is rendered the great angel.
Huh.
In the book of
It sounds kind of like he's saying to the devil, I'm not giving you an because it says they're contending. And instead of a railing accusation, you know, he's just like, I'm not explaining it to you.
right.
This is the situation and it's getting handled right now.
Well, you know, Jesus says in one verse, he says not to cast pearls before swine. And the swine have the devils in them in another story. And so maybe that's what he means is if they're just swine who are open to have devils fill their soul, then don't waste your words of wisdom.
Yeah. That's an interesting concept I hadn't thought of. Swine that are willing to have devils enter into them.
Right.
Huh. I like how you put that together.
Book of Tobit. I think Tobias. I think this could also be the book of Tobias or something like that. I saw it on Wikipedia. That's a link right there if you want to find out more information about what Tobit is. But it says, Raphael reveals himself, declaring, I am Raphael, one of the 7 angels who stand in the glorious presence of the Lord, ready to serve him. The other 2 angels mentioned by name in the Bible are Michael and Gabriel. The 4 names of the other archangels come from tradition, so they're not actually in the Bible. I just wanted to real quickly jump to something we kind of probably take for granted. You guys have been in Iraq, so you probably don't take this for granted as much as other people. But a lot of people don't understand how old Christianity is, how widespread it is. Well, a lot of times we're arguing about what the Greeks thought of it, and we're arguing about what the Romans thought of it, or what the Germans thought of it. But the truth is, it didn't just spread west into Christendom. It spread into Africa, to the land of the Kush. It spread to India. It spread. Some people believe that Maoism or Taoism in China is based on Christian philosophy. But here we have a map of the Kurds, and I have another map of Kurdish lands. You can see that they came from Russia and they moved south down into Greece, Turkey, Armenia, and all across this whole area here. So the Kurds, Kurdish Christians. I wanted to just point out who these people were before I read what they think. One of the religions from this area is Yazidism. In Yazidism, they believe there are 7 archangels, and it names them that'd be Gabriel, Jabriel, And it's spelled much different than we can recognize, but you can see that's Gabriel, Michael, Raphael, Azrael, Dodriel, Shem, Camille, Azazel, who are emanations of gods entrusted with care of the creation. 7 angels or archangels corresponded to, this is the part I wanted to get to. This is probably something we haven't heard before. The 7 angels correspond to days of the week. Michael is Sunday, Gabriel is Monday, Uriel is Tuesday, Raphael is Wednesday, Selathiel is Thursday, Ragiel or Udiel is Friday, Barachiel is Saturday. I've never heard that before. I thought it was interesting. Here's another place. You talked about the 4 angels just a minute ago, David. There's a guy named Rudolf Stein. This is a link if you want to know more. It says 4 angels govern the seasons. Spring is Raphael, summer is Uriel, autumn
versus the winds, the way we described it.
Right, and like here's a stained glass window from a European church where you could almost see that being the 4 seasons. And basically the idea being that they carry the objects through the sky. That the watchers are actually the planets, the moon, the sun, and these 4 seasons carry the sun and moon through the sky. So you have a lot of pagan things put in. And I was watching some videos today about the Roman Catholic Church and how Rome adopted Christianity is about the year 400. They dramatically went from feeding these Christians to the lions for fun to all of a sudden it being the official religion in a short amount of time, about 100 years. But from 300 to 400, you had this major shift in the Roman Empire. And it was a negotiation constantly because these people were pagans. Basically, they were giving concessions to the Christians. And so it wasn't really like the Christians adopted these pagan holidays. It's more like everyone was pagan and they were making deals with the Christians saying, okay, we'll take this holiday and we'll change the name of it for you. So it really wasn't the Christians adding pagan ideas in. It was more like pagan ideas letting Christian ideas over the top of them as a compromise.
So like they were Christianizing the pagan religion?
Yeah.
Instead of, and it was probably the other way around too, I guess. Paganizing the Christian religion at the same time, right? Is it that?
I think before when we talked about this, I kind of had this image in my head of Romans going out, the Christians going out from Rome and conquering German and English and Scottish lands and allowing them to have their religion in. But I never really thought about it, the fact that, Rome's the bastion of Roman thought. It's more like Christians all around the outside of their empire pressuring them to change, and Rome not wanting to change, because Catholicism, as we've discussed a couple of times, is basically the last bastion of their pagan religion. They have a completely different book, and it wasn't until the Reformation, when people started to translate the stuff from the original Greek, when they found out that, the Latin Vulgate is not actually what the Greek Bible said. And that's when they start to challenge the Catholic version of the Bible. In Enoch, it says one such tradition of archangels comes from the Old Testament biblical apocrypha, which means it's not one of the main books of the canon. This was found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, which is part of the stuff that was found in 1947. So people 100 years ago wouldn't even have known this existed. The 3rd century BCE Book of the Watchers, known as First Enoch or the Book of Enoch, eventually merged into the Enochic Pentateuch. This narrative is affiliated with the Book of Giants, which also references the great archangels, and was made part of the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church's scriptural canon. Although prevalent in Jewish and early Christian apostolic traditions and early Christian fathers, the Book of Enoch gradually fell from academic and religious status, and by the 7th century was rejected from the canonical scriptures of all other Christian denominations, a banned and unknown work. The various surviving oral traditions recounted many differing lists of archangels. The names entered Jewish tradition during Babylonian captivity, 605 BC, Babylonian folklore and cosmology, an early Mesopotamian belief under the dualistic influence of Zoroastrianism, centered around the anthropomorphic and zoomorphic representations of stars, planets, and constellations, including the 4 sons of the Sky Father, carrying the winged sun, the throne of wisdom. First, the prophet Daniel, then authors such as Ezekiel Hebraized this philosophy or this mythology, equating the Babylonian constellations with abstract forms held to be sons of gods, angels of the Lord of Israel, heavenly animal cherubim. The 2 BC Book of Parables names the 4 angels accompanying the Ancient of Days, standing before the Lord of Spirits. So, I could see how some people's faith could be brought into question, or their faith could be shook by, all these differing descriptions. But I believe all these people are just like those little kids. I want to come back to what the kids call them. These are little kids. These are little babies in Joplin that were saved in a tornado. What they call them? Butterfly people. You look at the pictures. They had the pictures. They said you might imagine their wings flapping really fast. They're like an apparition. They're see-through. They're whizzing off into the sky. What would you call it if you saw something like that? If you were 3000 BC, I mean, let's look at some of the pictures. Let's look at the Babylonian version of an angel. Perfect. This is exactly what I imagine.
We can't see anything.
Am I not sharing my?
No.
There
We're
we
just,
go. I can see it.
This whole time.
Yeah, I can
I
see
don't-
it.
I don't see it.
Are you on your phone, Mom?
Yeah. I mean,
Well,
I can
I don't think
you.
you can see it on your phone.
do what?
Do you usually see what I have on the screen on my phone? On your phone?
Yeah, normally. I see you and I see the Joplin picture behind you.
Okay, well, I don't think you
Tap
can
on
see
your
it
screen.
not on the computer, Mom.
You tap on your screen and see what options it gives you. Or is there some options at the bottom?
I need to get you a computer or something.
Well, here's the question too is, when does our representation of angels come into play, like the artwork of it? Is it around the Renaissance or the medieval area?
When they start to change to having halos and all that stuff.
Well, having the halos and the more like bird-like wings.
I would say that would be. Let's look at some Dark Age.
I mean, I would say it had to be around, not early, the early church, like the Roman church, but maybe closer to the European Roman church. Like once it is fully fledged, like 1200s.
Well, you see these, you start to see these early. This would have been probably 800. Let me open it in a new tab so you can see it.
Hmm.
So this would have been Byzantine. So this would have been around the time of Constantine.
Yeah.
So maybe 400, 500, maybe 600.
Well,
When you get into around
wasn't Constantine around 100 or 200?
Talking
Talking about Constantine the Great.
beginning of the Byzantines. Let's look at what year that says this one is.
There's cherubs and stuff like that, looks like.
As you can see, it starts to then this is the 1300s here. You can see
Yeah.
it starts to look more 3D and more realistic. These were very flat. They're during the what we call the Dark Ages.
So that'd be around the 1100s, the 12th
That one
century.
didn't hey, let me try this one.
Is that the one with the two angels standing side by side said about the 12th century?
These all have dates here. So this one
14s, 12.
16th century for that one, 14th, 12th.
So it's around about the 1200s when they started showing up. They're pretty prevalent with having halos and wings.
Constantine had to have been after Rome fell, and Rome didn't fall till the 500s. So let's
Well,
see.
Constantine moved the capital to Constantinople.
Yeah, I guess he had the Eastern Roman Empire before the Western part fell. Huh?
Because I think he's accredited for making the Romans start worshiping God in Christianity.
I hate that you type in
Catacomb of Priscilla is the
You might
earliest.
have to type in Constantine the Great. There it is.
306 to 337.
Okay.
This says the earliest known Christian image of an angel in the Cubicolo del Annunziazione in the Catacomb of Priscilla, dated to the middle of the 3rd century. Is a depiction of the Annunciation in which Gabriel is portrayed without wings.
Without wings.
So that was the 3rd century, about 250s.
But I mean, it looks like he has wings. But what I'm looking at, so I don't know. Maybe that's not the one. Maybe maybe they just don't even show you the painting. Maybe it's like a secret one that somebody special gets to keep in their house.
There's several of those, the same character with his arms out.
Medieval angels in Florence.
That's the Good Shepherd that I see.
Oh, you gotta see this one I'm looking at. It's kind of interesting. These ones, yeah, there's a bunch of medieval ones. This one's got like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 wings, and it looks like an octopus or something, and with the guy's head in the middle of it.
So we know about, the 1100s. We got Christian angels with wings, but what was the time frame with that one that you're showing us that had double wings?
The double wings ones, they go back to like 3000 BC.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've lost it now. I typed in Babylonian angels somewhere.
Yeah.
There we go. Here we go.
There.
So this particular one here.
But several of those look similar.
Well, they were captivated. They were in captivity in Babylon, and they were enslaved, and they were right around this period.
Seraphim. We talked about Seraphim.
Yeah, I just read a deal about that a second ago.
Okay, I was not paying attention.
There was I went through all the different Bible verses not too long ago, and Seraphim was one of the things we talked about. I've got a deal on hierarchy here in a minute that I want to talk about, but I'm looking for a date on this. I watched quite a bit of stuff about the Sargon of Akkad and how he possibly could have been Nimrod. But one thing that a lot of people don't really think about is a lot of times these people, this is not their real name. Like you can hear, like sometimes you don't hear about certain kings in the Bible. But the thing is most of the time, like if you hear a name like Sargon of Akkad, or if you hear like Amun Ra, that's not their name. They got that name when they became ordained as king or god, and their original name wouldn't have been that. And so it's hard to know, like if they say Babel or Babylon, or if they're talking about Baal, they may be talking about a god, whatever they're talking about, the Satan or the Christ. It could be a title. And in some of these place names are not necessarily the name of a town. It could be saying something like the gate of God, or
Well, we went over some of that when we were talking about Egypt and Moses. You start out with a name here, but you might have a different name over here. And then once you get title, like Bill becomes the Duke of Harrington.
So this was some of the oldest pictures of an angel. You see this one on Ancient Aliens all the time.
Yeah.
He's got a purse in his hand, and you see this purse all over the world.
Yeah, you ever watch Bright Insights? Or it's a girl named Joanna. They talk about a lot of that stuff too.
I was trying to find a date, but it seems to be impossible to do while I'm in this meeting.
Mm-hmm.
But even the Pazuzu, it's kind of interesting. The Pazuzu demon that we looked at has double wings. This is from the movie Exorcist. So this is a demon, and we talked about how it's possible that, it's not. It seems taboo for us to link the two things together, but the Bible flat out says that demons are fallen angels. And so I guess for me, it feels bad to even say that. You know what I mean? It feels like blasphemy or something to say an angel and a demon are the same thing. But it's like we talked about a few weeks ago. They're tasked with a bad job. It doesn't necessarily make them a different type of entity.
Yeah, and I think religious leaders have it's like that artwork. You always see demons as being horns and tails and ugly soul-eating creatures, but I think it seems like that they were created like that to instill fear. And
here's an ancient cherub. Here, I finally found the date. Neo-Assyrians. So this would have been, the Neo-Assyrians would have been the Canaanites. So this would have been the same people that Elijah was preaching to when they were worshiping Baal. So this would have been the same people, the Neo-Assyrians, up here in Syria. And it says the date, and this is called a cherub, and it has 4 wings. And the date would be 1000 to 612 BC. So
the image of
this would be 2,000 years between this four wing thing and the ones we were looking at on the European walls.
Yeah.
There's 2,000 year difference there. It says they move like flashes of lightning. That sounds like what the kids are saying and the tornadoes.
And a
That looks
double
like
wing.
that looks like some kind of propellers or something, doesn't it?
It said they had skin like shiny polished brass. Between the creatures glowing coals that moved between them could be seen their fire went up and down, and lightning burst from it. Cherubs also moved like flashes of lightning.
So you could see where that image right there, you know, could be more related to a butterfly person
Yeah, I think it's there
versus
was some
the
pictures they showed
angel
in
wings that we
video.
see.
There was a picture, there was a video that showed two kids looking at what they called the butterfly. In the video that I keep clicking on the wrong thing, sorry. So let's go to angels, guardian angels. There was a clip in one of these videos that I watched where the kids were looking at this angel, and it was basically a puff of smoke, and it looked like a woman with puffs of smoke above her that looked kind of like wings, and you could barely tell. And everyone kind of mentions, when they talk about them, they mention them almost looking like chrome, like they're reflective, and you can't quite make out a face, but it almost looks like hair type of thing. So it's a very blurry image. And so, you know, and I kind of imagine if their wings were, oh, let's just look at the butterfly right here. This butterfly has bottom wings and it has top wings. That's what makes it a butterfly person, right? So, yeah, I mean, if that's not a butterfly wing, I don't know what is. Top and bottom. So let's talk about hierarchy for a minute. We were just talking about cherubs. And there are different types of angels. So that we were just talking about cherubs, and then you were talking about seraphim.
Yeah.
And then it also said living creatures was a category.
Of angels?
Ezekiel and Revelation speak of other kinds of heavenly beings known as living creatures around the throne. They appeared like a lion, an ox, a man, and an eagle, representing various parts of God's creation: wild beasts, domesticated animals, human beings, and birds. They too worship God continually. Day and night, they never cease to sing, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come." You know, me and Mom were talking, I think it was me and Mom, we were talking about this just the other day, about, I asked, what does Jesus say about animals' souls? I don't remember where I found it, but I found something that was interesting.
Yeah, because a lot of people don't believe that your pets have a soul.
Genesis 2:7 says, "And the Lord God formed man out of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and he became a living soul." In the first creation story, man and woman are created in God's image, and he decided to let humans govern all animals. But it also tells us that animals have a soul. In Genesis 1:30, it reads, "And to every beast of the earth, and to every fowl of the air, and to everything that creepeth upon the earth, wherein there is life, I have given every green herb for meat." And it was so. Nephesh Hayeh is also used to describe all the sea animals and flying creatures Yahweh created. It says the cattle, creeping things, and beasts also have a Nephesh Hayeh, all as well as fish in Leviticus 11:10. If people dismiss the idea of animals having a soul because the Bible does not explicitly depict God breathing the soul into animals like he did with Adam, we could argue that women do not have the soul either, since it does not say that God breathed the nephesh into Eve. I think he's got a point there.
Yeah. I mean, that's he's used logic to explain his argument for sure.
Huh.
So maybe women don't have souls.
I was trying to figure out how to say that.
You can hypothesize that, I guess.
The Bible is riddled with passages where animals, as well as nature, praise God.
Data.
You can find it in Psalms, Isaiah, Book of Revelations, among many places. It suggests that all God's creatures are aware of God. An illustration of this is the story of Balaam's donkey. It demonstrates that animals are far more than soulless animated beings. Balaam is called the wicked prophet because though he knew God, he betrayed him. The king of Moab asked Balaam to go and pronounce curses over Israel in return for money. Balaam was able to fulfill that order because Yahweh had blessed Israel. Eventually, he found a roundabout way to invoke God's anger against Israel by enticing Israel to sin. However, while on his assignment, Balaam rides his donkey. When she, the donkey, sees the angel of the Lord standing in the way, 3 times the donkey had to sidestep the angel, and each time Balaam hit her because he could not see the angel. Then Yahweh opened the mouth of the donkey, and she asked Balaam what she had done for him to hit her. Balaam answered that she made a mockery of him. Then he said that if he had a sword, he would kill her. The donkey responds that Balaam has ridden her all his life and asked if she had ever acted like that before. Balaam answered no. Then Yahweh opened Balaam's eyes, and he was able to see the angel of the Lord with the sword in his hand. Balaam bowed down and fell on his face. And the angel of the Lord asked why he struck the donkey 3 times, and said that he came to stand in his way because his way was perverse before me, as the angel is a representation of Yahweh. He proceeded to say that if she had not turned away, I would certainly have killed you both by now, but I would have spared her. So
the animals.
I've never heard that
Yeah.
the 4 creatures in Revelations were the animals. Now, I was talking to Mama. I wonder what, I mean, if that's true, when, a tiger goes around just mauling everything, I wonder, does the tiger go to hell for being a bad tiger?
I mean, maybe it's just possessed by a devil.
That's
I mean,
what
maybe
That would be saying
maybe
that
animals can take on, maybe angels can take on forms of creatures. I mean, they could take on, if they can take on the form of a man, which we saw earlier in the Bible. I mean, maybe
that's a good point.
maybe when they're talking about strangers, entertaining strangers unawares that they're an angel, maybe that could be an animal.
Native
if a
Americans
dog
definitely
comes up-
believed it.
Huh?
Native Americans definitely believed that there were spirits in the animals.
Yeah. I think the angels are kind of more just I think they can intervene, and I think they're just your intercessor to God. They're just sending and relaying, and they're carrying things to God, messages to us, and then they're observing what we're doing, and they're going back to God, and they're ministering and explaining what's going on. Because it's like, it seems like somewhere I had read where it's like God's not just like always watching you. It's like it's almost like he couldn't be bothered. So it's the angels, but it's the angels that and there's some other like entity that cares about us. And so that's the only reason why he still allows us to survive.
That sounds like a very Catholic way of looking at it, worshiping an angel. And Paul says there's
It
one
is.
intermediate.
I didn't say anything about worshiping an angel. I said that they are the ones that are interacting with us.
Kind of like we talked about with demons having a bad job. The angels that be their job is kind of look after everybody. And the
Yeah,
demons just have to deal with the ramifications when you're a horrible person.
Yeah, when you're in prayer to God, they're the ones listening to your prayer to God. It's not, that don't mean you're praying to them. You might pray to say, hey, please, Saint so-and-so, carry my message to God for me. I don't know. I mean, maybe you could do that, but otherwise you might hope or assume, maybe just hoping that that's going to happen isn't enough. I don't know. I mean,
There's a whole religion based on that that Aleister Crowley created.
Yeah.
And I've got a page about it here somewhere. It's called
because I mean, if God was in the middle of it all the time, why would the angels be having to war in heaven? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. God's just kind of like kicking back, being kind of the boss, and handling things
so
as he sees
Crowley
fit.
basically believed that this guardian angel was your highest self, and he called it genius, and it's what the Greeks called genius. And he basically felt like you could call upon this spirit to be inspired to write great works of literature and things like that. And it's very similar to what the Greeks believed. The Greeks believed that the muses would come down and land on your shoulder. And so if you're like, say you're sitting at the piano and you just come up with a really awesome tune just out of nowhere, and you're like, man, that wasn't me. Like, I'm not smart enough to even come up with that. Where did that come from? They would say, oh, the muse was on your shoulder, because it obviously wasn't you. You're obviously way too stupid to be writing beautiful music like that. So, and for me, I'm the same way. I could never draw that masterpiece. Like, I'm blown away with how great of the picture that I just drew. Like, what happened? Because I couldn't have drawn that yesterday. I must have been divinely inspired. And so that's what this dilemma is all about, is tapping in. But this could also be like Satanism, calling on bad.
I mean, it's all, of course, it's going to be the same thing. It's just that it's going to be trickery there's going to be that one little thing that's going to get you on the wrong path. I mean, it's interesting to me, like how people use the Bible for all of the movies we watch, the shows, the games that we play. They all have elements of it in them, and these people come up with these stories that are related to the Bible. And I think it's just because of the fact that people are already familiar with biblical stories. And then if they just like subliminally assign different characters and different plots, different other things to it, then people are unknowingly just watching a story about a plagiarized story about the Bible that has been somehow altered into a new imaginary tale.
Hey, I shared a deal in our text messages. It was another blog with Jordan Peterson on Seth Rogen, and he talks about the Bible and how he went to the museum of the Bible, talks about the history of it. And it's really, I haven't watched the whole thing, but it's really informative, his insight into it. And he describes some of like what you mentioned about the Bible being, basically the groundwork, the basis of everything that we do. It's like, regardless if you think of it as a religious artifact, everything in our literature is based on it.
Mhm.
It's like, that's kind of the groundwork, because that was literally the first book. And he uses a nice analogy of kind of describing it as not a book, but a library. You know, a collection of books inside of it.
Yeah, I
Right.
like how you talked about, you
But
know,
it's-
even if you were trying to say that Shakespeare was
Yeah.
a foundational document, that's based on the Bible. So
Yeah,
and-
did you watch it? You
yeah,
seen
yeah.
it? Yeah. And it's interesting, because I think some of that stuff that he went through and looked at has kind of brought him away from being an atheist, I guess. He mentioned some of that in a different blog or something. But it kind of brings him towards the Bible.
Kind of, you know how we're always trying to talk about how all religions are, you know, there's a theory out there that all religions are really talking about the same thing. They're just coming at it from a different angle. You know, I don't really think that can be denied. I personally, in my own personal beliefs, because I mean, even if you're reading about Aristotle or if you're reading about Plato, they tend to come to a lot of the same conclusions. Like here, he's talking about the covetous driving force in man, and they talk about morality and things like that. Of course, you know, it doesn't cover Jesus, the savior of your soul, the savior of mankind. But a lot of these ideas about ideas not being your own, that's just kind of like, that's just a general observation that everyone can see. And no matter who's saying it, they're all kind of saying the same thing. Like in the Septuagint, it says the term is used for the will of God himself, highest desire of the God-fearing, and the royal will of the secular ruler. It is thus used only for the representation of high ethical willingness in the faith, the exercise of authority by the authorities, or the non-human will, but not more profane striving. In the Septuagint, the term boule or thelema appears, whereas the Vulgate text, the terms are translated into the Latin voluntas, will. Thus, the different meaning of both concepts was lost. In the New Testament, the original Greek version of the New Testament, the word thelema is used 62 or 64 times, twice in the plural thelemata. Here, God's will is always and exclusively designated by the word thelema, mostly in the singular. As the theologian Tully points out, by means of the Theological Dictionary of the New Testament, 1938, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. In the same way, the term is used in Paul the Apostle and Ignatius of Antioch. For Tully, it follows that the genuine idea of thelema does not contradict the teachings of Jesus. So we're kind of talking about divine will here. Do what thou wilt. This is tattooed on Jay-Z's chest, and this is a whenever you're seeing those videos about how celebrities sold their souls to the devil, this is their motto: do what thou wilt.
Well,
Basically,
no,
do whatever you want.
what it says is they believe that if they're virtuous men, honorable, and you have all of the good characteristics of someone that would be a vessel for God's will, that you do as thou wilt.
Problem is, they
And so
believe-
it's not saying everyone should do as you will. It's saying they're I think they're narrowing it down to they're describing the type of people that God would choose, and God would just do his will through them anyways.
But the problem is, many of the people we're talking about here believe that Lucifer is God, the God of light, and that Adonai is the God of darkness. They believe that these are devil worshippers here. Aleister Crowley. Freemasons.
So I mean, it's so you can't deny the fact that there is some reason to draw a correlation between Jesus and Lucifer when all things are said in the Bible. But are you taking their interpretation of all of those terms and translating them correctly, or are you just creating your own biased opinion based on what everybody else has said about it?
Well, I did quite a bit of research on that. Earlier this week, Robert, we did a show on current events, and one of the things we talked about, we got kind of spiraled out of control into conspiracy, and one of the things we talked about was Albert Pike, and how Albert Pike, he predicted predicted 3 world wars, predicted exactly how they would happen. David challenged me on it and made me look up and show him the evidence, because I was showing him the words, but it wasn't like from the original document. So he was challenging me on it. And come to find out, it was a hoax. But upon further research, I found out this guy named Taxil actually predicted the 3 world wars in 1890. But my whole point to David was, I don't care if it's a hoax or not. If you predicted 3 world wars and exactly how they were going to happen in 1890, 40 years before it actually happened in World War, well, I guess it would be about 20 years before it happened in World War One. And then, but they also predicted the war on terror across the Middle East and what was all going to happen there. And so they accurately predicted everything that was going to happen for the next 100 years. And from all I can tell, the guy who did it was just a comedian. He had a retarded name. He had a terrible name that he made up that was like 6, 7, 8 names in a row. And then on top of that, he intentionally joined the Catholic Church to make fun of him. And then he put out like 3 books where he was doing scathing. He was rebuking the Masonic Lodge, calling them all devil worshipers. And that's where all those rumors actually came from about the Masonic Lodge, was all this guy named Taxil. And everything that people talk about now is basically based on what he wrote. But everyone lost the part about it being a hoax. You never read about it being a hoax. You just see people taking snippets and repeating it over and over and over again. Like Albert Pike, he's seen now as almost this devilish figure, kind of like Aleister Crowley here. He's put in the same boat. But if you actually read about him, he was a philanthropist, a governor, a judge.
They're clearly intelligent people.
Yeah, he represented the Creeks and the it was the 3 of the 5 civilized tribes. He represented them in Supreme Court. So when they had a land dispute, he was the one representing them in the Supreme Court. So in some circles you might consider him a saint.
It just goes back to, it's just a matter of perception.
Or it's a matter of what are the facts, like who's giving the fact, who's telling the story.
Yeah, well, it's perception. Who's telling the story? We have somebody who hates him is telling the story.
Because you're saying we were talking about it the other day, like where's all the evidence? Why can't you find anything out about this guy? The only thing we know is this or that, and so. How do you really get to? How do you know unless you were there and you're a witness who can testify about things? Which is why I think it's a good thing that we have the discussion like today about angels. Have you ever had this experience? Do you know anyone that's ever seen this or that? What did people how did people depict it 800 years ago? And, you know, so I think that's good that we're kind of trying to cover our bases on figuring it out with a more broad way of doing it.
I was trying to find where I collected all this information. This is all different stuff I want to talk about eventually. But I just wanted to go to Taxil real quick and show where he straight up says these people are stupid. I've done everything I could. Like,
Can you spell his name again?
He says I went as far. Taxil, Taxil. Here's his
Okay.
confession. And I'm going to read the confession, interview, and his Luciferian quote. All right. 1897, he called for a press conference, claimed he would introduce Diane Vaughn to the press. At the conference, instead, he announced that his revelation about the Freemasons was fictitious. He thanked the Catholic clergy for their assistance in giving publicity to his wild claims. Taxil's confession was printed. The hoax material is still cited to this day. And here it shows he made up fake people. Everything he did was totally fake. He was kind of the whole thing, he was just a hoaxer. He was like a comedian, I think, in some way before comedians existed. He was satiring like how ridiculous the Masons and the Catholics were. And he was basically pitting them against each other, and they both fell for it. Later interview, this is in National Magazine, 1907. Members of the Masonic Order understand the false exposure heaped upon that organization in anti-Mason wars. The Catholic Church and many other religious orders have been the victims of these half-written and oftentimes venomous attacks. The Confession of Taxil, the French freethinker who first exposed Catholics and then Masons, makes interesting reading bearing on the present situation today. Similar motives actuate some of the muckrakes of today, as indicated in the following confession. The public made me what I am, the arch liar of the period, confessed Taxil. For when I first commenced to write against the Masons, my object was to amuse pure and simple. The crimes I laid at their door were so grotesque, so impossible, so widely exaggerated, I thought everybody would see the joke and give me credit for originating a new line of humor. But my readers wouldn't have it so. They accepted my fables as gospel truth. And the more I lied for the purpose of showing that I lied, the more convinced became they that I was a paragon of veracity. When it dawned upon me that there was lots of money to be made in Munchausen of the right kind, and for 12 years I gave it to them hot and strong, but never too hot. When indicting such slush as their story of the devil snake who wrote prophecies on Diane's back with the end of its tail, I sometimes said to myself, hold on, you are going too far. But I didn't. My readers even took kindly to the yarn of the devil, who, in order to marry a Mason, transformed herself into a crocodile, and despite the masquerade, played the piano wonderfully well. One day, when lecturing at Lille, I told my audience that I had just had an apparition of Nautilus, the most daring affront on human credulity I had so far risked. My hearers never turned a hair. Hear ye, the doctor has seen Nautilus, they said with admiring glances. Of course, no one had clear idea of who Nautilus was. I didn't myself, but they assumed that he was a devil. Ah, the jolly evenings I spent with my fellow authors hatching out new plots, new unheard of perversions of truth and logic, each trying to outdo the other in organized mystification. I thought I would kill myself laughing at some of these things proposed, but everything went. There's no limit to human stupidity.
So if we go based off of what you were saying last week, then his whole confession could have been fraudulent. right?
Yeah, it seems like he gets his whole.
Are you saying that all of that right there was just to make us think that they really were Satan worshipers and that he was? That's
Yeah, that it was. No, it's a hoax. It's a hoax. This crazy guy came up with this silly stuff, and now he's went too far, and he's embarrassed, and he didn't mean for everybody to get their feelings hurt.
Let's look at this Luciferian quote. This is Lucifer. This paragraphs about Lucifer are frequently associated with the Taxil hoax. They read, "That which we must say to the world is that we worship a God, but it is the God that one adores without superstition. To you, sovereign grand inspector general, we say this, that you may repeat it to the brethren of the 32nd, 31st, and 30th degrees. The Masonic religion should be by all of us initiates that higher degrees maintain in the purity of the Luciferian doctrine. If Lucifer were not God, would Adonai and his priests not calumniate him? Yes, Lucifer is God, and unfortunately Adonai is also God. For the eternal law is that there is no light without shade, no beauty without ugliness, no white without black. For the absolute can only exist as two gods, darkness being necessary for light to serve as its foil, as the pedestal is necessary to the statue, and the brake is to the locomotive. Thus, the doctrine of Satanism is a heresy, and the true and pure philosophical religion is the belief in Lucifer, the equal of Adonai. But Lucifer, God of light and the God of good, is struggling for humanity against Adonai, the God of darkness and evil. While this quotation was published by Abel Claren de la Rive in his Woman and Child in Universal Freemasonry, it does not appear in Taxil's writings proper, though it is sourced in a footnote to Diane Vaughan, Taxil's creation. So,
But see, like that, going back to what I've said in the past, Lucifer was an actual guy who started an actual sect of Christianity when he was kind of breaking off from the Roman Catholic Church and started the actual Luciferians. So it's like that. All these people have just been bamboozled into thinking Lucifer is the devil when it was just a guy who was pissing everybody off in the church during the 2nd, 3rd century.
Well, I thought, let's see, Lucifer's mentioned one time, right, in the Bible?
Yeah.
Let's read it. See if I can find it here real quick.
Isn't it Isaiah or something like that?
Yeah, I think it was. Let's see. Lucifer. So Isaiah 14:12 says, How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer? And then it was son of the morning.
Mm-hmm. But Lucifer translates.
And it says, How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations?
But the actual word, the name Lucifer actually translates to that. But he was that bishop that we talked about.
but in this, yes, the bishop's name was put there, but who he's actually talking about is the king of Babylon.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he was using that because both of them coincided with each other at that time. When they're putting his name in there, he's talking about the king of Babylon, but I think he might have been also talking about the bishop Lucifer falling from grace, falling from the church's grace because he was banished, he was kicked out. The emperor sent, exiled him, and they both kind of correlate with each other.
So we got about 15 minutes left. Let's start talking about what we want to discuss next week. I have been doing a bunch of research on MK Ultra. At some point, I'd like to talk about MK Ultra. Do you guys know what MK Ultra is?
Yeah, but So is that gonna be a separate thing then? Or I mean, are we gonna?
We
Are
can
we
we
gonna
can do it a
start-
couple of times a week. I don't care.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we need to have separate names for our. I wanted to call our thing the other day face to face.
Well, it's just unlocking the truth. So, whatever we want to talk about, it's up to us to bring it back biblical if we want to.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, do we need to try to separate them from one another? Because, I don't know.
The main thing I wanted to talk about was Charles Manson, and so it can actually tie in with all of this. Maybe
Charles
we want to
Manson
talk about cults,
and,
Satanism. I don't know.
I've been watching a bunch of videos now with some new stuff Randall Carlson's putting out about the plateau out in the Atlantic Ocean and Atlantis.
I was just
That's
watching
what-
that as well. I saw that same thing, the Azores, the sunken Azores.
Yeah. Apparently he has like an 18-hour video on his own blog about it.
I also, next week, I would like to start, I've got a book here. I got a couple of new books that I wanted to go start looking at. One of them has group activities for small groups, and it has to do with addiction and different things like that. And it's just a kind of a group book. And then I've got another one that's a Bible commentary book that I bought at a thrift store. I'm going to start pulling stuff from those. Could
we do like one on like our job is to find movies that have biblical elements that you don't know about, and then we'll see how similar it is to the actual Bible story.
biblical metaphors in movies.
Yeah, it'd probably be an easy thing to like research, find somebody that's already talking about it.
Monty Python.
So,
Yeah, like Monty Python.
How do we say
And-
that?
Like I was watching some Conan clips today. Conan the Barbarian. You know, at the beginning, he's getting a speech from his dad about, just existence and everything, and God and this and that, and the gods, the God of the sky and the God of the earth, and so on and so forth. So I'm curious to know, like, who are the writers and what were their motivations? Were they trying to send a message in this movie, or were they just using the Bible to come up with a good story that could help their movie? I don't know.
So what would we say? Unlocking the truth about movies, or unlocking the truth about Hollywood? Unlocking the truth about
The Bible in movies?
Conan's religion.
Conan's
Yeah,
religion?
what was his god?
It
Crom.
was
Crom.
yeah,
Yeah.
Crom.
Crom.
I started
Oh,
watching just little short clips, and then you start watching, and if you just watch the little clips, you start being like, oh, okay, that makes sense now. It's like little stuff.
It's like that baseball movie with Major
Wild
League?
Thing.
Yeah, with Wild
Wild
Thing and that big black guy. He's like Jobu.
Oh yeah, we had the shrine in his locker.
Yeah,
Yeah.
What was it? Wild thing? Braves?
that was the name of the character.
They're the Indians.
Yeah, was it Major League?
Major League, yeah, that's what it was
Yeah.
called.
Oh yeah, that was just the guy's. What's his?
That was his character. Can't remember his name.
So, I could think right off the bat, we were talking about how the Matrix a couple of weeks back, we were talking about how the Matrix, we thought it might be a biblical story. Can you give an example of what you might be talking about? Are you talking like, in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Yeah, like so, but I'm saying we would have to do the research to find out like who wrote it. Is it based off a book, or what were the motivations? What are the biblical elements they're saying are in it?
Kind of
You know, and
Metallica's
you, and you
creepy
may
death.
you may end up on one movie and just have a whole crap load of stuff to say about it. You know, or you might end up just having a list of movies and a few little talking points from each one that people might not have known about.
Kind of like Metallica.
Because people don't know the
Creeping
Bible.
Death.
Like a lot of people
And-
don't know anything about the Bible, so why would they associate something in a movie to the Bible? Like, you know, the whole thing about like Pulp Fiction when he's got the briefcase with the glowing thing in it, and everybody wondered what it was, and that he had, you know, he sold his soul to the devil and he was getting it back or something, that kind of thing.
Or even, you know, Indiana Jones, they have the Ark of the Covenant and that melts
Yeah, there's
all-
plenty to talk about from Indiana Jones.
All right, so let's just call it unlocking the truth about movies, and the biblical part of it's just understood because that's what we always do every week.
Okay. Cool.
All right, let's see, what time is it? We got about 9 minutes left. Is there anything we haven't covered yet about angels? We talked about hierarchy and hierarchy of angels with the cherubim, seraphim, and living creatures. We talked about the fallen. We talked about the antediluvians, the pre-Adamites. We talked about giants. Have we talked about aliens really at all being angels?
No, that's kind of I think we've kind of just let ancient aliens cover that, and you know,
There's actually a whole book here that I put on the page about that whole thing. I never did get a chance to read it.
well, see, and that's what like that one that I was reading earlier, I think was it Lot, that those two angels came to him, and then like the townspeople came knocking at his door, wanted him to send those men out. I was thinking, well, maybe they were just calling them men because they look kind of like men, but they knew they were different, you know, like aliens or something.
Right?
And that's why they wanted
Didn't the whole
it,
town
like it was
have
that,
sex with them?
huh?
Didn't the whole town have sex with them?
Oh, I don't know. No, I don't think so.
Yeah, that's the whole story. They got sodomized.
No, they didn't. I don't think so.
What? Yeah, that's what the whole story's about.
Well, let's look at it. Where, okay. I don't think so. I don't think that was what it was about at all. It was in Genesis.
Genesis 19.
Huh?
Genesis 19. Two angels arrived at Sodom in the evening. Lot was sitting in the gateway of the city. When he saw them, he got up to meet them and bowed down with his face to the ground. My lords, he said, please turn aside to your servant's house. You can wash your feet and spend the night and then go on your way early in the morning. No, they answered, we will spend the night in the square. But he insisted so strongly that they did go with him and entered his house. He prepared a meal for them, baking bread without yeast, and they ate. Before they had gone to bed, all the men from every part of the city of Sodom, both young and old, surrounded the house. They called to Lot, where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us so that we can have sex with them. Lot went outside to meet them and shut the door behind him and said, no, my friends, don't do this wicked thing. Look, I have two daughters who have never slept with a man. Let me bring them out to you, and you can do what you like with them. But don't do anything to these men, for they have come under the protection of my roof. Get out of our way, they replied. This fellow came here as a foreigner, and now he wants to play the judge. We'll treat you worse than them. They kept bringing pressure on Lot and moved forward to break down the door. But the men inside reached out and pulled Lot back into the house and shut the door. Then they struck the men who were at the door of the house, young and old, with blindness so that they could not find the door. The two men said to Lot, do you have anyone else here, sons-in-law, sons or daughters, or anyone else in the city who belongs to you? Get them out of here, because we are going to destroy this place. The outcry to the Lord against its people is so great that he has sent us to destroy it. So Lot went out and spoke to his sons-in-law, who were pledged to marry his daughters. He said, hurry and get out of this place because the Lord is about to destroy the city. So I guess they didn't.
I mean, that's a misinterpretation of the word in the 5th verse.
This is the New International Version. Let me switch to the King James Version.
So like compare that word, it's H 3045 yada yada H 3045 versus, let's find another place where it's like where it says like he knew her, you know, when Adam knew Eve, wasn't it? And they had a child. Let me see if I can find.
We may know them. That's what it says in the King James Version.
So but I'm trying to and Adam knew Eve his wife and she conceived. So in Genesis 4:1 they use knew H 3045. So same word.
And the word sodomy comes from Sodom.
No, I'm saying the word knew from verse 5 is a word. It's yada is the word yada, and it's used and it's used the same. It's the same word that's used in Genesis 4:1. For the in the context that it's used in Genesis 4:1 is when Adam knew his wife and she conceived. If that's what it's even, it's that if that's
Says
what it
yada
means.
has something to do with throwing stones, casting down, confessing, praising.
Yeah, I mean, if you go to the concordance, you'll understand what I'm talking about.
How did you look it up in the concordance?
I thought you had a concordance on the website. I have a phone app. See, my app.
How do you know that that word "no" is the same word "no" that they used in that?
It's H 3045. Because they numbered every word in the Bible.
So no. You say it's 3035?
Huh?
H 3035?
Yeah.
Genesis
You go to
9.
Genesis chapter 4, verse 1.
$30.45. Yada. Wonder why there's different. Wonder why both, like on Wikipedia,
Right.
if you look up yada, it has a completely different meaning.
That's that's the mystery of the Bible. I mean, how did they put so many words to so few words?
Right. I also think it's interesting. There was a trend about a month or two ago where there was a lot of people on TikTok talking about something along the lines of if you have sex with a woman, or no, it was saying it was about women, and it was saying that when a woman has sex with a man, his DNA stays in her, and so it literally, when they talk about how it's different for men and women and how men aren't looked down upon like sluts, but women, if they have more than one boyfriend, then they're considered sluts or whatever. Well, there was actually scientific evidence that showed that the DNA of the sperm actually stays in the woman. And so she literally has a record of like every man she's ever slept with. With that doesn't happen to men because nothing's inserted into us.
And I doubt that women keep that record in them very long. So
Yeah.
your body gets rid of cells and recycles.
What it says
I mean,
is that actually
Yeah, but how can you get contract any kind of disease then if you're not getting some kind of DNA from? How can you get a sexually transmitted disease? I guess is my question.
You're transmitting the virus.
Right. So a woman can transmit some sort of DNA to you through sex.
Well, her bodily fluids,
blood.
but the virus lives inside her, whether it's he or her, the virus is living inside your bodily fluids.
Yeah, but he's talking
Transmits
about,
over there.
I mean, he's talking about how, like, when you have sex with a woman, though, that if you know,
Yeah.
see,
that-
sex can cause
Well,
genetic.
I mean, it's just bodily fluids. So, I mean, if you're still a man's in contact with the woman's bodily fluids, so
Mhm.
why wouldn't you have her DNA inside you? I guess would be my question, Kit.
I'd say like with a man though, when you urinate, it's sterile and it's going to sterilize all that information out.
There's a
mean,
new study of women's brains.
This is an
Up
awkward conversation.
years old.
It's scientific, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Got the scientific evidence here.
Various articles all came to the same conclusion that wayward sperm must be at least one reason for the presence of male DNA in women's bodies. When sperm enters a woman, it swims until it hits a wall and then seeps into your flesh. One post claimed, then it enters your bloodstream and collects in your brain and spine. You can never get rid of it. The only problem is that this claim isn't true. Insider spoke to biologist Nelson, a member of the clinical. That's the thing about reading things today. If you don't read
That's
the
why I
whole
said,
article, you
yeah,
can never
I'd-
know anything.
you got to look at the. You got to look at
And
the.
lie to you like for
source.
15 minutes, and then they'll
Yeah.
have one. I read that the other day in another article. Like the whole article was basically repeating a lie, and there was one little sentence in the middle of the paragraph that said, "Yeah, but this was all bullcrap," and then it went back to repeating the lie again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just went right
Yeah.
back to it.
I've done that. I've seen something and be like, holy shit, I'd be reading it and be like, hey, check this out. Telling Tiffany, it's like, this is incredibly, interesting information. Then you read on another paragraph that you didn't get to before you wanted to share it. He's like, oh wait, never mind, this is bullshit.
You're all excited about it.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I got something to
Oh,
read
well,
about.
it was like last night I was showing her that video with Randall Carlson about the Ice Age and the shorelines in the Hudson Bay. I'm like, oh man, this is interesting as hell. I go to show her, it's like, and I go on in the video watching more of it that I hadn't watched yet. And she's sitting there watching me. She's like, what am I supposed to be getting out of this? I'm like, oh, sorry, that was the Hudson Bay. I'm just going on and on with the video.
Right.
Okay, so I found the real culprit here. The culprit is not from the man's sperm, so it's not a record of how many men she slept with.
Yeah,
It says the
wasn't-
most common source of male DNA is in an adult woman is from the prior pregnancy of a male child. So they had the baby's DNA in them.
Yeah, because I was gonna say if it was the same way, if it was, just from sex, then surely just kissing a woman would get your DNA in her body and in
Right.
her bloodstream.
And then they go back into saying the lie again. So if you didn't read this one paragraph, right here in the middle, you would be under the impression that all of that stuff was true.
Yeah, if you accidentally scrolled by it because there's 8 pictures that you have
Or
to
if
scroll
you,
through in order
you
to
guys
keep
hadn't
reading.
argued with me.
What's fascinating is, have you ever seen stuff on a woman who gives birth to a child and the child does not have matching DNA?
Yeah.
Like, it sounds like more
It's really rare, but like the child doesn't share DNA with her.
Yeah, this poor falsely accused guys on Montel Williams over the years that
Yeah, I worked with a guy in the army who was on that show.
Really?
Yeah, he was one of them that he was not the father.
Okay, so
that's
what about
funny.
this? Okay, what about this? I was going to read Lost Sheep, Lost Coin, Lost Son. They were stories from Luke 15. David, you were talking about allegories in movies.
Yeah.
Biblical allegories. So why don't we just go with allegories?
Okay.
And I think we could cover that for a couple of weeks, actually. And we could do modern allegories and old biblical allegories. All right, guys, it's been well over 2 hours. I was actually only planning on doing this for an hour tonight. But what do you guys think about next week, changing it to a weekday or something, so people
This
know,
week or next week?
like this, next week.
I'm going to tell you, the next 2 weeks are going to be pretty busy for me. We're down to the last 2 weeks of wrestling.
This
So,
week I've got double headers in
weekdays.
esports. Oh.
Say what?
This week I've got double headers in esports as well.
Yeah. I mean, I'll have to stick with Sunday this week coming up. I think that'd be best.
Okay.
And then next week, Sunday again. Yeah. Next 2 weeks, I'll have to do Sundays.
Okay.
And then we can change it up after that. Cause if you're needing to help me to help you with esports, we can just kind of figure out our schedule.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So next week is allegories.
Okay.
All right.
Sounds good.
Love you guys. Have a good
All
week.
right, man.
Yeah. I don't know how to stop it. There we go.